Melochim Perek Beis Halacha Gimel. We're talking about the honor you have to give to a king. Also, the Roise Kishur Om was not permitted to see him when he is not fully, when he is unclothed. So the Peirush says, "V'lo Kishur mistape," nor when he's taking a haircut. "V'lo Kishur b'beis hamerchatz," nor when he's taking a bath, even though he's partially clothed. "V'lo Kishur mistapek," and nor when he's half dressed, because the Mishnah cites Sanhedrin 22a. You don't see him when he is taking a haircut, nor when he's unclothed and out in the bathhouse, because it says in the Rambam, the posting we mentioned many times before, you should place upon you a king, that his fear should be upon you. And Rambam has an extra text of not when he's drying himself, like in Meleches Shlomo in Sanhedrin. The Peirush Mishnayos about the Nura explain not when he's taking a haircut. You can't see him take a haircut, not of his head, not of his beard. So the Beis Rebbe says the Melech should cut his beard, and that's the beauty of the king. For the difference, that's the opposite of what it says in Melech v'yofer yitachseno einecho, and the hottest problem is his beard. Also, Kohen Gadol, it says these rules. A person, a Kohen Gadol, has to be careful with how he dresses, and he shouldn't be lighthearted with the rest of the people. You should not see him undressed, nor when he's using the facilities, nor in a bathhouse, nor when he's taking a haircut, because it says a Kohen Gadol me echov. So the Pasuk says in Vayikra 21:10, the Kohen who's greater than all his brothers, that teaches you that his brothers, you have to give an extra honor. But the Kohen Gadol, that if he wants to, others should be bathed with him, that he may do so, as we find in Tosefta. Kohen Gadol wants others should bathe when he's bathing. In other words, they have to discuss things, and he doesn't want to waste time. He says if he wants to degrade himself, we don't listen to him, because as Vikidashta, you shall make him holy, against his will. Now I'm going to explain that even a Kohen Gadol, it's forbidden to see him in the bathroom, and a Kohen Gadol has to be careful to be regarding his own honor, and it doesn't say this by a king. Lecha Mishnah cites a Tosefta in Sanhedrin, and he points out that it doesn't mention the king that others should bathe with him, whether he's allowed to do so. And he brings that even though the Kohen Gadol can forego his honor, a king who wants to forego his honor, it doesn't work. Therefore, a king wants that others should bathe with him, you don't listen to him. The Chazon Yecheskel points out that the Rambam, he doesn't write that a king is obligated to honor himself. But from his language, it would seem that Kohen Gadol is obligated to be careful with his honor, because he has the holiness of the priesthood upon him, and that's part of holiness. Therefore, he cannot be seen or take a haircut or bathe when others are there. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda learns it from the posuk as well that we mentioned earlier, that the Kohen who's greater than his brothers, that he has to be in his actions, act on a higher level. He questions if he wants others to bathe with him, why is that permitted? And even we'll say a Kohen Gadol can forego his honor, but still he has to be. What about the holiness that is not his to decide about? And the answer is, the Tanakhama is like he agrees with Rabbi Yehuda, like Kohen Gadol is obligated to have honor himself and regarding himself. They only disagree by a Kohen Gadol that there's a need that the people should bathe with him, and it's not therefore not a degrading, because that's his needs. Tanakhama permits it, Rabbi Yehuda forbids it, since in any case there is a shame involved. The source of it is in the words of you should sanctify him. But the original Tanakhama is of the opinion that Kohen Gadol can forego his honor, but a king cannot do so. When he wants others to bathe with him, he has no right to do so. But the Rez Yisrael permits for the people who assist the king to be with him in the bathhouse and when he's taking a haircut, because he needs their assistance, just like the barber has to be there. After Chaim, the Hilchos Melochim question, why does the Rambam have to write that it's forbidden for a Kohen Gadol in the bathroom? It's any person, you're supposed to be tzanua, modest, as we find in Brochus 63. And it is after, it doesn't matter, it doesn't mention it at all. And why does he mention it? He leaves it with a question. Meaning, a person who died Rachmana litzlan without children, his brother is obligated to go through levirate marriage of the widow. If he doesn't want to go through levirate marriage, he has to give her chalitza, which means it's an act which causes a separation. But a king that can't do chalitza because Shenema says Yorko b'fonav. One of the actions that's done there is she has to spit in front of him, and therefore that's a shame to do that to the king, and therefore even if the king wants, we don't listen to him. A king who forgoes his honor is not forgiven. Since we have a rule that when you can't do chalitza, you can't do levirate marriage. And since he can't do so, because we look further, the king's wife cannot go through levirate marriage, so too you don't do chalitza for her. Because once you can't do levirate marriage, you can't do chalitza. That's it. They're interconnected. She's never allowed to marry anybody else either, because there is no levirate marriage. I guess the Mishnah cites Sanhedrin. A melech does not do chalitza, nor do you do chalitza to his wife. He doesn't do levirate marriage, and you don't do levirate marriage to his wife. It says if he wants to do chalitza or to do levirate marriage, he's commended for that. So they said to him, even if he wants to, we don't permit him to do so. The Rambam explains this is because the spitting in front of him is something that we can't permit to be done in front of the king. Okay, the Mishnah cites explains that a king who died without children, even if his brother will do chalitza to his wife, she's still forbidden to marry, because the widow of a king is forbidden to marry. And it's also not correct for a king that his wife should take off the shoe. If she was a queen, take off the shoe of the brother. The editors of Hilchos Frankel emphasize that the word v'gam also is another reason. And there are others who have a different text of v'oid, and furthermore. Rashi explains that it's forbidden to a king to take his brother's wife in levirate marriage, because it says that he does so that the child will be on the name of his brother, and therefore it's not proper that the king should have a child that's called after his brother. The Achron in question, Hilchos Yibum, he writes that the spitting of the Yavoma is not something that impedes the process, and therefore maybe she can do it without spitting. The Melech explains there's a din that when you don't do something which you could have done, then it doesn't affect it. But if she wasn't permitted to do it to begin with by a king, and therefore the chalitza will not take effect at all, because if you can't do it, then it does affect it, even if after the fact in a regular situation it would not. The Maracha Bolafia and the Maram Alevi point out that a Talmud Chacham that has to do chalitza to his brother's wife. He does so even though you spit in front of him, and it's an embarrassment. The king cannot do so because of the embarrassment. But when it comes to being a witness, it's the opposite. The Talmud Chacham sits when he states witness because of his honor. The king has to state witness standing. The Chidor recites the name of the Arisha B'Chabura Habor Chani, that the king Talmid Chacham can forgo his honor even with something that has embarrassment when it has to do with the mitzvah, and his covenant is forgiven because he wants to do the mitzvah. And therefore, you have to go through chalitza, even though there's spitting involved. But by witness, is the Talmid Chacham with state witness standing before the judge who's sitting, people will think that he's not a Talmid Chacham, therefore it's an embarrassment to him. And the pain of his physical being he cannot forego, even though there's no actual physical embarrassment by standing. Therefore he says witness when he's sitting. And the proof to this is because the Talmid Chacham is obligated to stand before his father, even if his father is an ignoramus. We don't say that the positive commandment of honoring the Torah is greater than the positive commandment of honoring your father, and he shouldn't stand. Because everything that is for a mitzvah is not considered embarrassing, because everyone knows this is his father, that's why he's standing up. But when it comes to a witness, then there is a shame, because when the judge is sitting, it would seem that he's a greater Talmid Chacham than the fellow in front of him. By the king, everybody knows he's king anyway. Any questions, why then does the king have to stand? The honor of the king is greater than the honor of the Talmid Chacham, and where do we know that from? Because as we learned before, a Talmid Chacham will forent his honor. It is foregone, whereas a king, if he does so, it's not foregone. And still, a Talmid Chacham sits, and he answers that Melech, who forgoes his honor, it's not foregone because it's the honor of the people of Israel, and he has no right to forgo that which is demanded by them. But when there's a question between two Jews, that this and the king is obligated to say witness and not Torah, if he says a witness like any other witness, or the Talmid Chacham, even though he can forgo his honor because there's nothing causing it by others, when he has judgment with others, you have to honor him because of his honor of the Torah that's within him. The Chidor brings from the Derech HaMelech. Before he explains that witnesses have to stand because of the honor of the dying. There's a Talmid Chacham. Therefore, the Melech is obligated to stand up. The Talmid Chacham doesn't have to do so because he's a Talmid Chacham. And the Aseh, the positive commandment to honor the Torah, is greater. And he disagrees with this answer because a Melech, as we said before, cannot forgo his honor, whereas a Talmid Chacham can. Now, and he remains with the question: what happened if the king took the wife not correctly? So he has to divorce her. When the brother of the king takes a levirate marriage, even though it's forbidden, the levirate marriage takes effect. She's his wife. But now he has to divorce her because it's forbidden to him to live with the king, for the brother of the king to live with the king's wife, and therefore it doesn't matter that it went through levirate marriage. If a king gave chalitza to the brother's wife, the chalitza would work, and she's permitted to others. And he went ahead and did levirate marriage. Here, the question, the mental sunnah, is not sure. There's a mitzvah 497. It could be that he's not obligated to divorce her. We'll look before Parak 1, chapter 1, Halacha Chet, that Shlomo might have married his brother's wife, Nosson, after he died, because all the descendants of David are from the household of Nosson, of the wife of Nosson. According to Rashi, the king cannot do levirate marriage his brother's wife, when the brother died without children. because the child being named for his brother is considered an embarrassment to the king. But when if the king did do so, and there's no longer an obligation of yibum, then his rule is just like any other levirate marriage. If he wants to divorce her after the first relationship, he's permitted to do so, because he fulfilled his obligation of levirate marriage, which is really the first cohabitation. The Peirush HaMeir cites in the Yerushalmi that the wives of a private individual are forbidden to a king, because a vessel that was used by a private person cannot be used by the king. According to this, levirate marriage would be forbidden for another reason to the king, because his brother was not a king. And Minchas Chinuch adds, if a king went ahead and he transgressed and he did do levirate marriage, he is obligated to divorce her because she was the wife of a private individual. And he brings that the Machon Nesher questioned why the Rambam left this halacha out, which is found in the Yerushalmi, that the wives of a private person are forbidden to the king. And why did he say that the king cannot go through yibum with his brother's wife only because he can't go through chalitza? He should have mentioned because she's the wife of a private individual. And the Chassidus answers that the Rambam is talking about only after her engagement, and he died before he married her. Therefore, it's not considered a vessel that was used by a private person that's forbidden to the king. And in Hilchos Chinuch, you can explain how David married Bathsheba, that she was only the fiancée, the betrothed of Uriah Achiti, and not his wife. The Chidah infers from Rashi in the Rambam that they gave the different reasons to forbid the king to go through the yibum of his brother's wife. From what it says in the Yerushalmi, that a king is forbidden to marry a woman that was a private wife of a private person. But the Rae Gann explains that the king cannot do levirate marriage, because again he should not use a vessel that was used by a private individual. The Rishash in Sanhedrin 19b takes the position, simply so, that the wife of the brother of the king that died without children is forbidden to be married to anyone if there's no other brother to go through chalitza. But if there's another brother, certainly the other brother should do chalitza or levirate marriage. Now, we should point out, the words of the editor Mela, a king died without children, his brother would be the king, and it would seem that he should be permitted in the wife of the king, as if there's levirate marriage involved. The Chidah in the Chaim Sha'al questions on the Rambam. A king who forgave his glory, his honor is not forgiven from Chagigo. In Perek Gimel, Halacha Gimel, the Melech used to read in the Torah in the ears of all the people, and he would read it seated. If he stood up, that's praiseworthy, because any need of a mitzvah he can forgo his honor, and he can stand. And therefore the question is, why by chalitza or yibum he can't forgo his honor? And the answer is that he's permitted to read about me standing, because there's no embarrassment here. It's just not fulfillment of total glory. And for dvar mitzvah he can forgo on his honor. But by chalitza there's a bezoin, there's embarrassment. Therefore, even if he wants to be embarrassed for the mitzvah, it's forbidden. His honor is not forgiven. Lechem Shamayim cites from Masechta Bikurim. Somebody brings Bikurim, he comes to the Azorah, and he puts the basket of the Bikurim on his shoulders, and even Agrivas HaMelech does so. And we mentioned that Agrivas was a kosher king, as we find in Soita and Ksubas, and the Rashbam writes in Psochim, and we find this in Hilchos Bikurim, the Rambam. He places the basket on his shoulders. He was a great king. He questions, why don't we say that his cover is not forgone? And he answers that the mitzvahs by Bikurim, he can put it on his shoulders to humble himself L'kovot shamayim, regarding heaven. Therefore, it's different, as we find by Soita, in Masechta Soita 41b. When the king prays, he has to bend the entire time during the prayer. He has to be bowed, because he is greater, and therefore he has to show greater humbleness to Hashem. Therefore, according to this, the king states witness standing up. The king forgo his honor to be humble before Hashem. The Talmud Chacham sits, because there the glory of the Torah is not his, he should forgo it. The Mashal explains that the honor of a king of Yisrael is the honor of heaven. The whole world is his, and so the majesty is his as well. Can forgo his honor, that's it. But a king who is physical cannot forgo his honor, because it's not his to forgo. Because it says, Ki Lashem Amlucha, God has the right of kingdom. If God wouldn't forgo his honor, we wouldn't be able to do anything. And as we find in the Mordechai and Gittin and the Machon and Kedushin, they add that according to the Mashal would seem he wants to give a reason for the enactment of Chazal and Brochos 58a, that somebody sees the king of a Jewish king, he says he gave a port from his glory to those who fear him, because the honor of a king of Israel is because of the glory of heaven, and he receives his honor from the glory of heaven. If somebody sees a king of the nations, he makes a different blessing, which is who gave from his honor to the flesh and blood, because God gave it to him as a present, and therefore that king of the non-Jewish king can forgo his honor, because it is his to forgo. As we find in Avodah Zorah 10b, Antonius would bow to Rebbe, even though he was Caesar, and Rebbe was a prince of Israel, but he was a Talmud Chacham. He represented the Kvod Shamayim. In the Mishnah Sanhedrin, we find Melech does not do Yibum, doesn't go through levirate marriage. Abuda says if he wants to, he can give Chalitza, go through it, or to do levirate marriage, and he is remembered for good. And they answered him, no, we don't listen to him. The Machon Nesher questions, you don't listen to him from who's the king asking. If it's levirate marriage, he does it. If he does it against her will, it's also valid. And it's not like levirate marriage is not like chalitza. You need a bezdin, and they won't do it. The bezdin. We see from this that a yibum needs to be in front of witnesses. And it says to the Mishnah that you don't listen to him, is the witnesses should not be around when he wants to be Yabim. However, the Mishnah Lamelech is questions if you need witnesses at the time of levirate marriage. Today's Yontif questions on the Rambam. Since there's no king, he gives chalitza, and therefore he doesn't go through levirate marriage. We don't find a rule such as this. We find the opposite, that whoever doesn't go through levirate marriage cannot do chalitza. And furthermore, we find by somebody who's a deaf mute, and his wife is deaf, or she's deaf, the wife is deaf, there's no chalitza, because they have to say things. But the cherish can go through levirate marriage, because he doesn't have to say anything. The Kol Sefer questions on Rabbi Yehuda. If he wants to do chalitza yibum, because Rabbi Yehuda says it's commendable, why does he mention first chalitza? The mitzvah would seem to the preference should be for levirate marriage before chalitza. The Shiur Sefer wants to infer from the language of Rabbi Yehuda that the rule of the Rambam, that by chalitza yibum we don't listen to him, because chalitza is a shame to the king, and when there's no chalitza, there's no yibum. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda said that he mentioned specifically chalitza to show that he doesn't agree with that. The later commentaries question on the halacha, when the king dies without children, You don't give chalitza to his wife because whoever cannot go up to levirate marriage cannot go to chalitza. And why is the rule halacha of the king different from any other positive obligations that do go up to chalitza, even though they don't go up to levirate marriage? You have to place upon you a king is a part of commandment. Why don't we say that therefore the obligation of chalitza would obligate him to go through chalitza? The Rashash in Sanhedrin 19b points out on the explanation of the Kesef Mishnah that you don't give chalitza to the wife of a king because even if he gives her chalitza, she'll remain forbidden to marry others because the idea of chalitza is one that stands by itself, and it doesn't come to tell her to be married. This is the concept of chalitza itself. It's brought down the Zohar in the same way. The Chacham Tzvi and other later commentaries discuss what's the purpose of chalitza. Is it to permit her to marry? And if she doesn't want to marry, or even if she wanted to marry, she cannot, like a woman, wife of a king, that even if she's permitted to marry through chalitza, she's forbidden. She's not obligated. Or we say that she has to do chalitza because the mitzvah of chalitza and not in order to marry. The Chassam Sofer says that it seems simple from the language of the Rambam, which is brought in the Torah and Chuvas Haran, that when the Yovam and the Yavama are happy and there's no disagreement of money, they don't want to get married, or the levirate brother doesn't want to marry this other woman because his wife doesn't want him to, then Bezin cannot force him to do either chalitza or yibum. And that would seem to get in the Gemara in many different places. According to this, we can understand the Kesef Mishnah that the wife of a king who remains forbidden, there's no obligation of chalitza, because the obligation of chalitza, the purpose of chalitza is to permit her to marry. But the Chassam Sofer adds that the Beis Shmuel and Achla Shiva refer to the Zohar, that is a mitzvah to do it for the good of the soul of the person who passed on. The Chassam Sofer says Zohar does not mean that it's an obligation, but it's just like divorce. Somebody wants to get rid of his wife, he has to divorce her with a divorce separation, therefore he fulfills an obligation. But that doesn't mean there's a mitzvah for every person to fulfill one of the 613 mitzvahs. If you divorce your wife with a divorce paper, so to chalitza comes to permit it to marry. Because that the Zohar adds that there's something unique for the soul of the deceased, and it's a charity that she does with the person. And therefore the Chassam Sofer says that you don't force her to go through chalitza when it's difficult or embarrassing, or when she doesn't want to get married, she's not interested. The Achronim, the later commentaries, point out from the words of the Kesef Mishnah that it is a embarrassment to the king, is that the widow of the king should take over shu, because the actual action of taking off the shoe is an embarrassment. We see from this we can prove that she cannot appoint a shliach to do the chalitza, or we say that it's embarrassing that the brother has to say, I do not want to take her. It's one of the things he has to state. And the embarrassment is regarding the king to say so, regarding the king to say about a king's wife, I don't want to take the king's wife. The Hanois Yaakov is of the opinion that even by the king's wife, there's obligations of honor, just like by the king. According to him, it's degrading when he tells her that he doesn't want her. And one can push this off. When the king is alive, we act with his wife the conditions of glory of a king. After the king died, and we want to give chalitza to the widow, you can't say that it has anything to do with the fact of the king himself, and therefore it's outside of that issue. It doesn't take any effect upon that.